first video was supposed to be a one-off. I know that the video I stitched was a joke about horse girls. But I thought, hey, this will be a fun jumping off point to teach some people some Greek mythology. Did not expect to have to make 5 videos total on the subject of centaurs. Did not expect people to get so angry with me, especially about things that they could easily confirm themselves by either going to the public library or a Google search. So many, but Disney, but Narnia comments. And I keep getting the question, if all centaurs are male, how do they reproduce? The answer is they don't. The centaurs that came about, according to the myth that I told you about, were a punishment. And they are all male and they are all adult and they are immortal unless somebody ends their life. Monsters. They were punishment for the king's hubris of thinking that he could force himself on Hera. So Zeus turned a cloud that also happened to be a nymph into the form of Hera, and instead he forced himself on the cloud, who then gave birth to full-grown male centaurs. Now the centaurs in this myth are not wise sages. They're not peaceful creatures. They are basically Ted Bundy attached to a horse. They run around the countryside abducting women and young boys to force themselves on. That's what they do. They are not party animals like Rick Riordan would have you believe. No, they are monsters. They are absolute monsters that force themselves and attack people. And for those who keep saying, well, mythology doesn't matter, mythology matters. As I pointed out when I discussed the subject of Disney, the going theory where the myth of centaurs came from is seeing warriors on horseback for the first time. Now imagine you're a villager and this strange troop came through your village. They stole your food, they stole your valuables, they kidnapped your wife, your daughter, your sister, your son. They left you with nothing. And they came by so fast, and your brain somehow mixed it up that these were half human, half animal. Centaurs are violent monsters in Greek mythology. And that's not counting Chiron, because Chiron is technically not a centaur, as he has different origins. So I want the 5th video I did on centaurs to be the last video I do on that subject. I did not set out to start a debate and get angry comments. However, I want to address an angry comment that I have to keep removing because people are just being too rude about it. And that is, well, what does it all matter? Mythology is all fiction. Folklore is all fiction. It doesn't matter. It very much does matter. It very much does matter. Myths and folklore can give you a lot of psychological insight on people. They really can. It can show you what they feared, what they loved, what they revered. And it can even be proof of certain things. Okay, so let's take my favorite subject, which is vampire folklore. All right? Can you guess why I love vampire folklore? According to folklore, at least European vampire folklore, vampires don't just feed off of blood. They also feed off of psychic energy. And they can get that energy by manipulating dreams. They can either cause you to experience the ultimate pleasure in your sleep, or they can give you chronic nightmares and feed off of your fear and the psychic energy of your fear. One of the symptoms of anemia is chronic nightmares. Now let's take a subject I'm not as well versed in, and I will tag somebody who is much more knowledgeable than I, but that is fairies, and specifically the folklore of the changeling child. Now, according to what I know of fairy folklore, is fairies cannot have healthy children, so they often abduct human children, and they will leave either their sickly child in that child's place, or something like a log, whatever. They put a glamour on it to make it look like the child that they've just taken. If you read the description of the behavior of a changeling, it pretty much fits somebody with autism to a T. I mean, just absolutely perfectly. So, changeling folklore is proof that autism has always existed. And before brainwashed sheep blamed innocent vaccines for something we know for a fact is genetic, they blamed the fairies. This is why folklore and mythology are important. They give you so much insight and they can prove so much about the past. With a little bit of folklore, I just proved to you that autism has always existed. It has always been long before vaccines existed. So vaccines are safe. Thank you, folklore, for proving that. So let me start off by saying this is going to be a long video. So if you have never seen me before, if you have not seen any of the 5 videos I'm going to be referring to, you can scroll away. This is just something that I need to say. Hi, my name is Jamie, and normally my TikTok is focused on cosplay and story creation. Now, while there's a number of different characters I cosplay and original characters that I do, my most popular characters are Adaphasia, the Greek goddess of gluttony, who is an actual goddess of the Greek pantheon, minor harvest goddess, and then my original vampire characters, Constance Maynard and Claire Donovan. And it is Claire videos that I wish to address. On a whim, I stitched a more popular creator who was talking about centaurs to make a joke about horse girls. I did not expect the video to take off. You know, Greek mythology happened to be one of my hyperfixations along with vampire folklore as a child. And so I know a lot about it because I grabbed anything I could from the library on it. Some of the comments I've gotten in the original video are getting to me emotionally. Some of them I've had to remove. The ones I've had to remove are ones accusing me of being mean. I'm not mean. I'm autistic. And I only found out I'm autistic in April. I was born in 1976. So I'm Generation X. And there's a reason why so many of us Gen Xers are on the sides of millennials and Gen Z. And that's because we were failed a lot as children. And one of the failures is that autistic girls were ignored. They didn't believe we existed. So I didn't get a diagnosis until now at the age of 46. I'm going to be 47 in September. I'm asking people to please be patient with me as I try to unlearn a lot of the things I was programmed to believe about myself, how to act and everything. I don't get sarcasm. I don't understand when somebody's flirting with me. None of that. And while my character of Claire is not autistic, obviously some of my autism is going to show in my characters. I also have ADHD, by the way. There's a reason why I refer to society as a cult. And there's so many ways in which the cult of society has programmed me that I need to be deprogrammed from. For instance, I look in the mirror and I see the ugliest thing on the face of the planet because I'm fat and I'm middle-aged. And that's because society worships young and thin. No matter how many times people tell me I'm not ugly, I don't believe them. So that shows you some of the stuff I'm struggling with. So again, I am not mean. I am autistic. And if you're being sarcastic in the comments and not adding sarcasm, I'm not going to understand. Okay? You're going to need to give me clues that you're being sarcastic. Now, for those of you who have called me dumb, and I've removed those comments as well, because I do not mention the female centaurs. I can't pronounce their name. They were not part of the original mythos. They did not show up until 5th century BCE. They were not part of the original myth. The original myth, all centaurs are male. And all centaurs, with the exception of Chiron, who's a completely different origin story, are basically Ted Bundy attached to a horse. I say that in one of my Claire videos. They are Ted Bundy attached to a horse. They are extremely violent monsters. And one of the people who added them in is Ovid. When it comes to mythology, you cannot trust Ovid. I don't care how many people quote him and stuff. Ovid was a putz. Probably the best way to compare Ovid is the Christian Bible, honestly. So, specifically the King James Version. That verse that a lot of so-called Christians like to use to condemn witchcraft, saying, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Yeah, until King James came along, it was, "Thou shalt not suffer a poisoner to live." Then King James was like, "Oh, I want to get rid of all the witches because I'm misogynistic and I can't stand women. So I want you to change that verse to, 'Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live,' so I can justify going out and hunting witches." That's where that came from. And Ovid changed things and added things. And that's not the only change. I mean, take Medusa. In the original Greek mythology, Medusa was never human. She was born a Gorgon. She was one of 3. For some reason, her sisters were immortal, and she was the only mortal one. And then the Romans came along, they stole a lot of this stuff and changed it, and suddenly she was human and was cursed because Poseidon forced himself on her, and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, things get changed, things get added. But originally, centaurs were all male, so I'm not wrong, and I'm not dumb for saying that. Just because female centaurs were added later on does not mean I am wrong, because I'm talking about the original mythos. For those of you who keep bringing up Disney and Narnia, Greek mythology is over 4,000 years old. Fantasia came out in 1940. Narnia came out in 1950-something. I don't know exactly when. I'm sorry, Greek mythology trumps both of those. And don't even get me started on Piers Anthony. If you read his other works, such as Firefly, The Incarnations of Immortality, plus some interviews he did after writing those books, you're going to see he has some very twisted views when it comes to grown men and little girls. As far as I'm concerned, Piers Anthony needs to be canceled just as hard as J.K. Rowling. He's just, there's something. Ugh. I can't even enjoy the Xanth books anymore, and I used to love them. I am enjoying the fact that I'm getting a lot of new followers, because I do have a goal of getting to 100,000 followers, because some of my friends insist on calling me an influencer. I keep telling them I'm not an influencer because I do not have the numbers. On the other hand, the comments calling me mean, calling me dumb, going, "But Disney, but Narnia, blah, 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 blah." They're getting to be too much for me. And I'm begging you guys to stop. I'm begging you to stop with that. And for those of you who have come in and said, "Oh, mythology doesn't matter because it's all fiction," it matters, it matters, it matters, it matters, it matters. Mythology matters. Folklore matters. You can't just dismiss it because it's fiction. It does matter. I even did a video as Claire on why mythology and folklore matter. And I hope people watch it. I'm sorry, I'm just getting a little worked up. And I'm sorry that this is so long, but I had so much to say. There's so much more I could say, but you can't upload longer than a 10-minute video on TikTok. I'm just begging you people, please stop being mean to me in the comments. Please.